name is Jonah Jonathan, and welcome once again to the Jazz Musician's Voice. We've got some great new interviews coming out through Skype. With the coronavirus, a lot has changed. So, the first interview today, I'm presenting with a great friend of mine, Jeremy Shaskus. We are touching base about a year past our first interview, and we're talking about the Seattle scene and what he's doing there in Seattle during the coronavirus epidemic. Please subscribe and stay tuned. We've got a lot of great future interviews coming up, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, today I'm talking with my good friend Jeremy Shaskus. You know, it's been almost a year since we did our last interview when I was out in Seattle. A lot of has happened during that time since with the coronavirus and everything. But can you talk about like some of the projects you were working on in the fall time before coronavirus?
Yeah. So around that, before COVID, like pretty much put everybody in lockdown, I was kind of making a big switch from like performing and trying to lead my own groups to becoming more of a sideman. Let's see, during the fall and the spring, it's like there were some things happening. I had a decent schedule. One of the groups I perform with regularly, Breaks and Swells, they were getting ready. We were getting ready for touring and recording an album. I think we had we were going to do Timberfest. We were going to maybe do South by Southwest and just kind of like do a tour down to LA and back for about a week or two. I know that I was about to get the spot in Nathan Breedlove's quintet, and I know he was going to kind of like bring up a whole ska thing. For those that don't know, Nathan Breedlove is like one of the unsung heroes of like the 90s generation. Like he was best friends with Roy Hargrove and so on and so forth. He's one of those dudes that like was hanging with the heavies but never really fully got the spotlight. And then he ended up getting the gig with the Scotalites for about like 10 years. Beautiful soul. I've worked with him in like my own projects and stuff. And I've worked with him with this trombone player named Mark Mason, he's doing everything. He keeps playing. I mean, he doesn't have the best. He's like a 70-year-old dude that is just constantly gigging, knows thousands of tunes, can sing, play percussion, plays trombone really well, but he's doesn't have the best rep in town, and a lot of people kind of roll their eyes at him. But if you actually get a gig with him that pays some like good bread and stuff, he's got like top-notch dudes, because he knows everybody. He's one of those guys that like knows everybody, but hasn't been able to have like the limelight featured on him. Anyways, it's about before COVID. So I was working with Mark occasionally. I was supposed to start working with Nathan, and Breaks and Swells was touring. For my own stuff, I was making a transition into being kind of more of a modern composer. Like I managed to get on the roster for a couple music libraries. So I was starting to focus more on kind of like the digital age with digital music. And then the lockdown happened. And then Breaks and Swells pretty much like had all their gigs canceled. Like as soon as I found out about Live Nation canceling their national tours, it made me realize that all these other festivals are canceled are canceled. I was supposed and this happened literally the week before I was gonna kind of like go and play with Breedlove's group down in Tacoma for the Tacoma Jazz Walk, and it was a fucking great. I was so excited for it. Canceled. My regular gig with the Joe Brazil Legacy Band out at like Cafe Ibex, canceled. Like everything shut down with live music, which was fine. Oh yeah. Yeah, which was fine because again, if you know how to compose and you know how to use like Logic or do like basic engineering stuff, you can keep busy with producing work and find a new way to focus. So after the lockdown, because I've got ties with friends that are in the conspiracy theory world, and it's like, and with the news that was coming out at the time, like back in March, there was all this conflicting information. I think I was verging out into more pop music stuff. I guess a friend of mine sent me a video because I was trying to dig into TikTok, and this was like right before Doja Cat blew up because I mean, because that's one way she got super famous, and she kind of like represents the new age, like Gen Z, older, like nerdy millennials that are into that like talk internet culture. She represents internet culture. And the way I've kind of pinpointed was like I had been following these trends for a while. So the way I kind of describe it is that you have pre-Doja Cat TikTok, which was absolutely insane, right? It was like the algorithms weren't there. You didn't have all these like cosplaying, like OnlyFans e-girls on there. You didn't have like the old Vine stars taking over. You didn't have all the celebrities. It wasn't as commercialized as it. I mean, it was commercialized, but not like boiled down into a formula. And then now the TikTok you see, you have it's post Doja Cat, which means everybody's trying to get famous. It's all like it's turned into like a mini public access app. So, and I've been
yeah. I mean, TikTok is TikTok. The thing I noticed with TikTok is that people use the same compositions. Like there's probably about like 5 or 6 songs that people use for all their different videos. But probably as a composer, I know you started your Quaz-eye music. You were working on some of that stuff. Talk a little bit about being a composer. I know you worked like helping with some TV shows. You're working with your former partner Nadia could represent on a TV show, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Nadia and I think we've known each other since I moved back to Seattle. We had a romantic entanglement for a couple years. If she sees this, she's gonna kill me because she's one for anonymity. I hope I pronounced that right. But yeah, aside from like wanting to play jazz and be a session musician, I've always wanted to be a media composer. And so I had been trying to write for other people, but I didn't fully understand the like the publishing and the copyright side, or I had a basic idea. And so right before the lockdown happened, I created my personal publishing entity, Quaz-eye, and then I managed to take the branding into Quaz-eye Music. It's like music to meme to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's like certain business steps you need to do for like tax write-offs. And the reason I created that was because the submission in terms of like the business side of music and getting your music heard, it's so fucking twisted now. Like it's become a money sucking machine for the indie artist because without the labels. Like I know the big labels ended up getting fucked up, and I mean like with the whole recoupment phase, they give you like loan, and you were essentially dealing with a giant loan and cycling debt, and hopefully you were smart enough to understand that you could buy wealth. Like you could use some of that that front money that they gave you to like buy properties and so on and so forth. That's a whole other issue that's been covered there. So pretty much with the fall with Napster and the fall of the labels, everybody pretty much has to be like, unless they have like a full-on crew, you have to be your own PR dude. You have to do your own marketing. You have to write your own press releases. You have to write the songs. And pretty much what this means is that, and it's all just a money game at this point. Like, if you could write the most inspirational, deep, hard-hitting, like catchy song, but it's going to get swallowed up if you don't have like big label money. Like if you look at everybody that you hear about, they say they're independent. And I've been saying this for like 3-5 years. As soon as I discovered this, they're not independent. They have big money coming in from like Universal or Warner Brothers or Sony, and they're able to pay for the ads on Facebook. Like if anybody's like Jonah, have you like tried to promote your web series through like one of those Facebook pages?
Yeah, I have the Jazz Musician's Voice. We have a Facebook page. Facebook ads used to be a lot more effective. Now it's like you'd have to pay a lot of money just to get your stuff out there. But I did read a recent article. It's pretty interesting. It said if Drake decided to go independent, it would kill the music industry because dude could just like go on his Instagram every 2 weeks. So I'm coming out with a new record. He'd make $10 million every 2 weeks, But that's a whole other aspect. I feel like because of coronavirus, a lot of musicians are not working, trying to navigate the aspects of online and streaming and social media, but it's still not the same. I follow a good friend of mine, Spike Wilner. He posts on Facebook about Smalls and his troubles with the landlord, and they haven't really given much of a all that stuff.
I thought he owned the building. So, I thought he owned the building, which is why he opened up Mesro. Like, I didn't think he had to pay rent anymore.
No, he doesn't own the building, I don't think. And he's got to pay property taxes and rent. That's one. I'm not really a business person, but I think those buildings are extremely expensive. So most of that stuff you got to do leases and stuff. But yeah, I mean, my idea has always been there. Like I've posed this to some people. Why not make like a universal streaming service for music, video streaming service, where you could see gigs and it'd be like kind of like Netflix, where you could have access on your like Roku TV or whatever. You can watch gigs and you pay like $10 a month or whatever, and it gets distributed to the clubs and the musicians. But
it's because we're dealing with the my answer to that question, because no, one, that's a brilliant idea and I don't want to underwrite it, and I think that there is that it is probably going to happen relatively soon, depending on the lockdown situation. But what was I going to say? But it's there are too many people trying to do live streams now, and I know here in Seattle, which is like the new one of the new Silicon Valleys. Like, you have a lot of people coming in to work as computer programmers for like Microsoft or Amazon or Zillow, Facebook, Google. We pretty much have like all these offshoots of tech workers here, and a lot of them can actually play their instrument. A lot of them can't, but they have the money and they have the popularity and friend groups to like bring people into venues, and that's a whole other issue. And that was like pre-COVID Seattle. But I know there's a well-known organist here in town that has been working with an ex-computer web developer who designed this site called Jazz Kazam, and so it's still kind of in like the indie free market, like YouTube platform, where you can donate if you want, and so paying for the actual subscription is different. Personally, what I'd like to see is similar to what you're doing, but I guess having shows on OnlyFans, you know what I mean? And like the old collaboration between like e-girls that are dancing to, like with live music. Just think of how brilliant that would be. If I had the connection.
I'm sure the jazz singers would be into that, maybe, but
then that's underwriting so much history in jazz. I mean, Charlie, there's a great Phil Wood story about how he had a gig at a nudie bar, like a burlesque show thing. And he was playing saxophone, and then he went across the street and saw Charlie Parker, and Phil Woods wasn't digging on his gear, and then he goes on his set break to go play with to show Charlie Parker's horn, and then Phil Woods just said, "Fuck, I need to practice," after Bird played it. I mean, there's this huge connection with like the history of jazz and being kind of like outlaw music, and like this whole kind of like sexual revolution thing that people tend to ignore. But yeah, just think about it.
Yeah, I saw a great documentary on it was like an Amazon kind of actor fact fiction thing on Hugh Hefner, and he was really a big thing on jazz, and he did the whole Playboy jazz, and he was like really one of the first in like the whole civil rights movement with Playboy jazz. And I know like the Playboy Jazz Festival is a big thing. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something, Can you talk to us a little bit about, I know you, since the coronavirus, I know you were doing a lot of park playing outside and doing like socially distanced playing with the masks and stuff. How's that been working out?
I've learned so many more tunes, and I've gotten to meet so many more people. I mean, for a while, I actually made my money as a with this group that was like a street band, and it fit the right aesthetic for a Pike Place market. This was like a couple years ago, and now it's turned into like the society band. Speakeasy Jazz Cats is their name. The leader is like my brother, so we always have our ups and downs. You know how family fights, right? But,
Yeah.
so he, so I'm completely used to busking. I can sense the situation. I know some of the parlor tricks and stuff. It's with a bunch of old dudes. Like, I think and it's gotten situated. It's like literally one of the best gigs in town. So Tuesdays, I'm in Green Lake neighborhood playing jazz with, I guess it's like a quartet. It's with Mark Mason, Dan Greenblatt. The bass player is usually this old head named Michael Barnett. Fabulous dude from Detroit. And then the drummer kind of like transitions. And I'm learning new stuff. It's great. I'm learning new stuff. I'm getting to work on my ears, and it's fun. And then on Sundays I play klezmer with Mark Mason. He and a lot of his friends from like the Mazel Tones or the local Seattle klezmer community. So there's that, and then I got hooked up with some like kids that are like under 20 or like under 25. Like some great talent here in like in the northern like outskirts of Seattle that many people don't get to hear about. And so it's like playing wise, I'm actually having the best time of my life. The only problem is, and like artistically, it's like I'm growing. I'm finally getting to be able to have a voice. But the money is never really that good because we are in this weird one. The guys that I'm playing with, they don't know how to use technology, and people aren't really at least in Seattle, are not carrying as much cash as they want to. So like actually making a living doing that, it's like unless you have like a sign for Venmo or something, you'll play like a couple hours, you'll make enough to make lunch or to pay back your parking. Like you'll break even, but also, but in terms of like people actually handing out cash, unless you like attach it to the political climate that's going on right now, because you're just gonna break even for the day, which isn't bad. I mean, you still have fun and you get to focus on the music, but unless you and I hate to say this, unless you like attach BLM to what you're saying, people aren't going to donate. Like my friend Alex Dugdale, he's got like some of the best gigs in town. He's a band teacher. He's really into like the Seattle boys club that exists within the scene. And I mean, aside from being a phenomenal musician, like he's kind of like Dave Pollock, except Seattle-fied, meaning, and so where he like plays trombone, but he also tap dances, and so which is a whole other argument. But he did like a free kind of like open jam in a local park and said all the money's going to charity and going to the Black Lives Matters charity to like and the bailout fund. And he brought in like $300 in like 2 hours. I'm sitting, yeah. So it's like there's like a weird way, and it's business. It's like it's advertising. It's like how do you phrase this? How do you market it? Which is why I started up Quaz-eye Music. It's because I'm 31, 32 years old. I'm tired of having people telling me what music to play, what's appropriate, what's not. And it's like, this is my publishing channel. I have the power now to just put out what I want, say what I want, and it's great. And then I can hide under, and then I can use it to put out other things. Like I've got one of the main focuses through Quaz-eye, is putting is a weekly podcast. It's on SoundCloud right now. I'm waiting to get like 10 episodes to put the season out on iTunes and everything.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because I know that's a project you've been working on. What is it? That Seattle Swing or?
Yeah. So the show's called That Seattle Swing. I'm waiting to hear back from a local radio station to pick it up. Pretty much it's just me, my friend Alex, my friend Darian. We're like three kind of like mid-generation saxophone players that play like all across the spectrum. Like I'm doing, that play across the spectrum. Like you got Alex, who's got the best kind of like commercial gigs. you got Darian, who's more in the rock R&B cover band world, and then you got myself, which is just doing whatever to survive and trying to be more on the cutting edge, who doesn't agree with a lot of stuff. So we talk about saxophones, we talk about like the Seattle scene. Like the last episode was talking about music prep and the whole concept of being professional, because there's a lot of misnomers that are there. Before that, we had a couple guests. We had this young dude who's about to move down to Portland named Brandon Lee Searly, who's he's a good saxophone player, and he's working with Farnell Newton and dudes down there to do this like blend. And then we had this guy who moved to town named Rex Gregory, just came in and like ate up all the gigs when he moved in. From he knows some dudes in New York. Like he knows Reggie he grew up with Reggie Quinterly, and knows it, and I think used to play or hang out with Delphio Marsalis. Like there's some gems here in Seattle. But the whole reason I started that podcast up was to was because we were lacking. So musicians need to play music. They need to be able to talk to music. And when you're not able to go and be in person, it's like you not only start losing your chops, but you start losing your skill. You start losing your sharpness. You start going a little bit more insane. And this is coming from like from a diehard introvert. I know I seem pretty confident, but no, I need my space. And so I started calling like the old heads I knew to come and get on the show, because Jonah, like you've been going around and documenting things. You kind of inspired me to kind of do it to start talking with younger musicians and the whole scope of Seattle, to like kind of consolidate everything and have it be in this one place where you have the history like recorded. And of course the hard part with also get some musicians to just play tunes and stuff, and like kind of, because that's half the show. It's like we sit there, we talk shop, maybe we have an interviewer, maybe not, and then we go and we play tunes. It's just like a musician's thing. And so the difficult part though is getting the old people or the older people on there, because they won't use Zoom. They're like they're immune. They're the people that are most likely going to get COVID and die from it. Like they're the immune compromised. So that's the trickiest part.
Definitely try to get it on iTunes. You know, you could probably even put the podcast up on YouTube and just have like a photograph there, or like changing pictures. But definitely a great idea. You talked to us a little bit about. You said, we communicate pretty frequently over Facebook and everything. Talk about being a Jewish jazz musician. How does your religion affect the lifestyle? You know, because I know it's a pretty important thing for you, and you had plans. Say you have plans to move to Israel. So.
Oi. All right, so I don't know where to begin, because this is like becoming such a hot topic. I was hoping you wouldn't open this can of worms. So first off, the biggest misnomer or mispoint of education is that Judaism is a religion. If you look at modern science or scientific process and everything, you'll see that being Jewish, there's a different kind of DNA that Jewish people have, and it's closer to be like you know how when you see a white person, he could be they will look a certain way because they're British, or like when you look at a black person, they'll look a certain way because they're from Morocco or like Western Africa. Italians, the difference between a Sicilian and a Northern Italian, the difference between like the Southern Mexicans that have Aztec blood versus Northern Mexicans, which with some of them can be lighter skin. I hope I get that right. So and then if you actually go through history, like within World War II, like even the Russian history or even German history, it's been proven to be more of like an ethnicity. People call it an ethno-religious state. the person I'm probably going to be quoting the most, who's articulated this stuff in the best way possible, is Rudy Rochman. He's an advocate for justice. He went to Columbia. He started up the whole anti-Semitism for Columbian students because apparently that's really anti-Semitic. Before he went to USC, brilliant dude. He's becoming like a main voice. He's involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and he's got some of the best views. But for me, I started, I guess, a couple years ago. I'm what the From or the really religious people would call a beit tshuva, which means to return. You're making return. And so I'm studying. I could be better about being observant and going to shul, but I have to get over kind of like the whole organized religious thing. But pretty much I'm in this process of coming to terms with my whole kind of like Jewish identity. With Jeremy's pyramid scheme, I was taking it to kind of like that whole level, kind of like what John Zorn did with Masada and stuff. I've applied to grants and things. And it's really kind of, but so being Jewish is like closer to being Native American. You can look at the DNA stuff. Culturally speaking, it's like, because once you get into psychic shit, like where like the breakdown or the difference between who you feel comfortable with, or like the psychic walls, that and you get into the subjective world, and that's where everything falls apart. Like I actually just got into this argument last night with a couple of dudes where they were just being like low-key anti-Semitic. Like pretty much there was this dude, I was with my friend Brittany, we went up to this bar in Everett. This dude, a couple of weeks ago, this dude who I guess like picks up the cigarette butts, like total scumbag, comes up and says, so we're wearing a mask is like being labeled with the yellow Jewish star. And I look at him and just like, what? He's like, yeah, we're being marked like the Jews. And I just kind of went off on him for like 5 minutes saying, no, you're appropriate. Why are you just singling out the Jews with them? If you're going to say it, it's like, yeah, if you're going to say that and say we're being marked with like the masks and anti-vaxxers, you can say we're at the same time as Nazi Germany, because the Jews weren't the only people being marked with them, being marked with the star. You had like the lesbians, you had black people, you had the gays being marked with stars, you had the fucking Romani. Like it's why are you singling out the Jews to appropriate your own point of feeling like you're suppressed? It's like you can't, even if you hide it and assimilate into modern white culture, because there is a fucking difference between being Jewish and being white. I'm sorry, it's a personality, it's a cultural thing, and I say this because there's definitely a disconnect. It's like definitely a huge disconnect. When you're, anyways, because I think I'm trying to think of who, I think one of the national African American leagues actually posted up like what David Duke's definition of being white is, and yeah, and which is like being Western European descent, being of the Christian faith, behaving in a very kind of stoic, very polite way, no crosstalk, one person talks at a time. You have to take into account other people's feelings and shit like that. It's and then when you start getting animated about something, you're considered hysterical. It's anyways, like I said, you opened a can of worms, Jonah.
You have plans to move to Israel, right?
Yeah, I'm planning on making Aliyah because of the entire political scope, and it's like, I think I sent you this video where you had Farrakhan like becoming mainstream. Like I think there was this interview on one of Nick Cannon's shows where he had the dude from who was it? Fucking Public Enemy, like on there, and he was just kind of pushing like that Farrakhan Black Hebrew Israelite narrative, and if you actually where the blacks are saying we are the real Hebrews, blah 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 blah, and it's kind of coming out of like the Nation of Islam, which I've done my research on that, which is like an American version of Arab Islam. Like, I mean, but I think one of the leaders, like Elijah Muhammad, like the son of the originator, ended up moving more towards like Sunni becoming more of a Sunni Muslim. But when Farrakhan took it over, he's not. I'm sorry, I've seen his speeches, and he's not. It doesn't come across as being Muslim. I know Muslim people from Palestine, from Saudi Arabia. I mean, I know dudes from Sudan who've been around the culture. I know we've talked a bit about the cultural differences, because I know you've got some ties into the Muslim world. It's like, and if you actually look at the actual Arabic, Islam means to surrender. It means to surrender. Like I'm slowly learning. I'm trying to become fluent in Hebrew. I know if when I move to Israel, I'm going to have to become at least be able to speak Arabic. By the way, the Arabic Quarter in Jerusalem has some of the best food ever. And it's just so yeah. I mean, to make it short, without overloading all this shit and causing too much divisiveness. The country's going to shit. The people are going to say, I don't like the fact that people are accepting the term white Jews, because that underwrites an entire part of history. It's like they're an entire scope of history, and it's completely insensitive. It's like the equivalent to a person saying, I'm colorblind to a black person, and the black person saying, you're overwriting all my shit, all the trauma I went to with history, or all the trauma a Native American person had with the reservations. It's like by saying because up until I think like the 30s or 40s, Jews were not considered white. They had their own kind of like persecution, but they were able to but they brought in old customs from the old world, but it also overwrites like Hitler's final solution, all the anti-Semitism that happened in Europe, and it is more divisive because the last time I checked, we're all Americans and we're all fucking Americans. I mean, we all have the ability for social mobility, assuming we don't get fucked up with the differences. It's like we come here. So the whole big long tangent to answer your question, Jonah, is and normally I don't get as tangential. I usually leave more space for conversation. I just get excited with interviews because nobody wants to hear my opinions.
Well, what are your before we finish up? What are your future plans in the coming months with Corona, and what are some of the projects you're working on?
Let's hear it. So before I get to that, I wanted to finish the other point about the whole being Jewish and stuff. It's a great creatively. It's a great inspiration, and it's a great inspiration for music, because studying jazz and Coltrane and studying klezmer side by side, you see the parallels that are happening, and it's just making everything stronger. Going actually to the source, reading Torah every day, davening. It's like a greater form of meditation. It's kind of it's a grounding thing that hopefully will and a better foundation set to hopefully be able to communicate. In terms of Corona, after my plans with Corona, with Nadia, I'm working on this show called Band Practice. We're 3 episodes in. Hopefully we filmed the 4th episode. Hopefully we get that there. I've got an EP that I'm getting ready to drop as soon as I can stop running around and playing music and performing. It's called Music Your Mother Won't Like. It's like there are 4 songs. I don't know, totally goofy, kind of like more modern EDM stuff. Like the first song's called BTGB, A Neckbeard's Fantasy, and it's just kind of like a scene out of an anime. The second one is called Human Extinction, which Nadia kind of like had this idea, and we just kind of made the track. It's this. The third track's called Level Up. That's mostly done. So Music Your Mother Won't Like. I've been sitting on this title for a while. That's coming out soon. I know. And then pretty much it's just keeping on with my plans. Like there are a couple other music libraries that have half finished up stuff. I just got a new mic, so trying to open up and advertise for more in-home recording. I think I'm a part of this movement called Decriminalize Nature Seattle. It's changing to this ethnogenic society. the actual name for the group, because now they're filing for 501(c)(3), Ethnogenic Society of Washington, which is all about the medicinal use of hallucinogens. You know what I mean? Not so much LSD, but like psilocybin, iboga, ayahuasca, mother ayahuasca, like maybe anything derived from a plant. And I managed to brand our Logan hashtag Free the Plants. And the person that's leading the group, she's a professional therapist. There's a huge want and need for this in Seattle, because the antidepressants and a lot of the chemicals they put in your body when you have mental illness is really, really can be really toxic. So they're looking for a more natural, spiritual way to help people to help change society. I know they're doing research at UW, so that's another thing. It's like I'm helping with. I guess I finally have like a little bit of a social media department there, so they're working on the branding and the logo, and hopefully I can just kind of take more of a backseat and like design or like shirts or create and write music for them. So that's another plan. So there's always a rotating cast of things. There's also another thing. So to backtrack one little bit more, because I know this is unfiltered and there's a lot of shit. Like I said, I don't usually talk this much. So the first release I put out on my personal publishing on Quaz-eye Music was the song called "The Coronavirus Cure." It was a rush release. It's buried in the algorithms of the algorithms of YouTube, because it was so it's like one of those unknown controversial songs that just gets shelved on a big label. And this was, I think it managed to come out the day after after Bill Gates announced that he had the cure, and they're trying to go into a vaccine. So if you actually and so the first line of the song it's a rap song. So because with everything that's coming out about the vaccine and the cross information and the fucking crazy politics, you know what the first line's gonna be? The cure to the coronavirus is my dick. I gotta send you the link to it if you want to sample it. But
Jeremy, thanks for appearing again on the show. Any chance we'll see you out in the Northeast anytime soon?
I was supposed to, probably not, because of, I guess, some travel restrictions, and I think my sister moved to DC, so, which is kind of like the home base arriving point. So that, and with everything shut down, it's like traveling isn't really like of the greatest, or traveling across the country isn't of the highest importance right now.
Well, Jeremy, thanks for talking. And I'll include the links to some of your stuff for people, and they can check you out searching Jeremy Shaskus online, right?
Oh God, no, don't do that. Just click the links. I've tried to find a way to actually have a decent fucking online presence, and it's just failed. It's like it failed horribly. I mean, there's probably some cool stuff, but it's. I'll send you the links to send it to people. I'm trying to get a better image, but yeah. But no, Jonah, dude, thank you for calling me up, and thank you for the interview, and thank you for just letting me ramble for, God, almost an hour.
Yeah, thanks, man.